Welcome to the insane lifestyle of Playboy dictator Fidel Castro. In the next few minutes, you're going to see how a so-called champion of the people lived like a king while his country crumbled. From luxury yachts to secret mansions, we're about to expose the lavish lifestyle that Castro kept hidden from the world. If you've ever wondered how dictators get rich, or how to spot a hypocrite in power, this video is for you. Let's pull back the curtain on one of history's greatest frauds. The $900 million man, Castro's secret fortune. Money talks, and in Castro's case, it told a shocking story of hypocrisy that would have outraged the average Cuban. Despite his famous olive green military fatigues and modest public persona, the numbers painted a very different picture of the communist leader. In 2006, Forbes magazine dropped a bombshell on Castro's carefully crafted image when they ranked him as the 7th wealthiest ruler in the world. Their estimate? A staggering $900 million fortune. Even more shocking was how quickly that wealth had multiplied. According to Forbes, Castro's net worth had skyrocketed from $103 million to 850 million euros, approximately $900 million, in just 3 years. That's not gradual growth. That's a financial explosion that would make even Wall Street tycoons jealous. How does a revolutionary leader who claims to champion the common people amass such extraordinary wealth? The answer lies in Castro's iron grip on Cuba's economic system. Forbes based their estimate on Castro's control over a network of state-owned companies, including Cymex, Cuba, and the Havana Convention Palace. These weren't just government assets. They were Castro's personal piggy banks. When you control an entire country's economy, the opportunities for enrichment are endless. What's particularly interesting is how the system worked. Castro didn't need to officially own these companies on paper. As the nation's supreme leader, he exercised complete control over their operations and, more importantly, their profits. While ordinary Cubans waited in bread lines, these state enterprises functioned as Castro's personal ATMs, allowing him to siphon funds whenever he wanted. The Forbes report also mentioned persistent rumors about Castro keeping large stashes of his fortune in Swiss bank accounts. Switzerland's banking secrecy laws made it the perfect place for a communist dictator to hide capitalist wealth, a contradiction that couldn't be more glaring. These hidden accounts potentially held millions more that weren't even factored into the Forbes estimate. When confronted with these accusations, Castro reacted with predictable outrage. He vehemently denied the Forbes report, insisting he lived on a meager salary of just £20 a month. This performance was classic Castro, the humble servant of the revolution, sacrificing personal comfort for the greater good. But the numbers told a different story, one of secret wealth accumulation on a massive scale while his people struggled with rationed food and crumbling infrastructure. The true genius of Castro's wealth-building strategy was how he blurred the lines between state assets and personal assets. Unlike more obvious dictators who flaunted their wealth publicly, Castro maintained the facade of revolutionary austerity while quietly controlling an empire. He didn't need to officially own companies when he could simply direct their resources however he pleased. This allowed him to enjoy enormous wealth without the messy business of having his name on ownership documents. This gap between Castro's public claims and private fortune represents one of history's greatest financial deceptions. While preaching against the evils of capitalism and material excess, he was secretly participating in the very system he condemned, only without the transparency or accountability that even capitalist systems demand. A private paradise, Castro's secret island getaway. While ordinary Cubans endured crippling travel bans under Fidel Castro's regime, their leader escaped to Cayo Piedra, a secluded island paradise near the Bay of Pigs. This mile-long sanctuary, outfitted with a dolphinarium, yacht docks, and guest villas, stood in jarring contrast to the scarcity gripping the mainland. Castro erased its historic lighthouse to shroud the retreat in secrecy, as revealed by the Associated Press in 2006. For decades, Cubans needed government permission just to leave their homeland, while their leader luxuriated in a private Eden built on their deprivation. Castro's secret spot was designed for luxury and privacy. He had a fancy bungalow built for himself, a house for guests, and a special building for his bodyguards. A bridge connected the two parts of the island, and there was a marina for his boats. The sound of gentle waves lapping against pristine shores and the rustling of palm fronds in the breeze created an atmosphere of total tranquility. Getting to the island was an adventure in itself. Castro had his own private marina near the Bay of Pigs, where he would set off to his island paradise. He didn't use just any old boat, though. Castro had two special yachts for this trip. At first, he used a boat called Aquarema 1, taken from one of the old government officials after Castro took over. Later, he upgraded to Aquarema 2, a 90-foot-long yacht with a gleaming white hull. This floating palace was decked out with rare wood from Angola. The real magic of Aquarema 2 was under the hood. The yacht boasted 4 powerful engines, a gift from Soviet leader Brezhnev. These weren't ordinary engines, they were from missile boats, capable of pushing the yacht to speeds over 42 knots. Castro also had 2 smaller, faster boats, one loaded with weapons and the other with medical equipment. When Castro arrived at his island, it was like stepping into another world. Juan Reynaldo Sanchez, Castro's former bodyguard, called it a Garden of Eden. The island wasn't just for Castro's relaxation. He would bring famous guests there, like writer Gabriel Garcia Marquez. One of the island's most impressive features was its amazing lagoon, teeming with turtles and dolphins, a sight Castro loved to show off to his guests. All this luxury was a far cry from the simple life Castro claimed to live. While he told the world he was a humble leader, he was enjoying a billionaire's playground. Cayo Piedra was just one of 20 luxury properties Castro owned across Cuba, revealing the stark disparity between his public image and private indulgences. Living large, inside Castro's lavish Havana compound. Castro's private island was just the tip of the iceberg. His main residence? It made that island look like a shack. Welcome to Punto Cerro, Castro's sprawling estate that would make even the most seasoned billionaire's jaw drop. While ordinary Cubans struggled to find decent housing, Castro lived in a luxurious compound that spanned a whopping 75 acres in Havana's upscale Siboney neighborhood. This wasn't just any home. It was a fortress of opulence that screamed, "I'm the boss," louder than any revolutionary speech ever could. Let's step inside Punto Cerro, Fidel Castro's guarded compound in Havana. Far from Gatsby-esque opulence, the residence was a functional complex where Castro lived and worked. Among its unassuming features was a curious addition: a bowling alley, built in the 1960s at the Havana Libre Hotel, where Castro occasionally played. It laid in a hotel once symbolizing capitalist luxury, repurposed after the revolution. Castro, who championed austerity, rarely showcased personal indulgences. Yet while he rolled strikes under chandeliers, ordinary Cubans navigated ration lines, a stark duality of revolutionary ideals and daily struggle. But wait, there's more. Castro didn't trust just any hospital with his health. No, he had his very own private hospital right there on the grounds. Talk about exclusive healthcare. And if he felt like a dip, he had multiple pools to choose from. Feeling sporty? No problem. There was an indoor basketball court ready for action. Behind Punto Cerro's guarded gates lay a paradox of revolutionary ideals. In the 1960s, Castro commissioned Copelia, a state-run ice cream parlor, to rival American brands and provide affordable treats to Cubans. But during the 1990s special period crisis, as citizens queued for basics, Copelia's dwindling supplies contrasted sharply with Castro's reported fondness for its rum raisin flavor, a bitter irony not lost on Havana's hungry. His family's access to fresh milk, sourced from state-owned farms, also drew quiet resentment. While most Cubans relied on ration cards, Castro's children received provisions typical of high-ranking officials, a privilege masked as revolutionary necessity. As for security, Punto Coco's bunkers and surveillance were real. Castro, who survived 638 assassination attempts, prioritized safety over spectacle. The compound wasn't Fort Knox, but a fortress of secrecy, guarding not just a man, but the contradictions of a revolution. Now, you might be wondering, how did Castro justify all this luxury while preaching equality and simple living to his people? Well, that's the million-dollar question. Or should we say, the $900 million question. It's a stark reminder of the old saying, "Do as I say, not as I do." But here's the kicker. Punto Cerro was just one of Castro's many homes. That's right, the man who claimed to live like a humble fisherman had a whole portfolio of properties that would make a real estate tycoon blush. There was a beach house for those balmy Cuban afternoons, and a hunting lodge for when he felt like playing outdoorsman. It's almost like Castro was collecting homes the way some people collect stamps. Each property more lavish than the last, each one a slap in the face to the ideology he claimed to champion. Feasts fit for a king, Castro's culinary indulgences. Castro's meals were fit for a king. While regular Cubans had little to eat, he enjoyed fancy food from around the world. His chefs were trained in international cooking. They made dishes that would impress even the pickiest food lovers. Seafood was Castro's favorite. He loved lobster and caviar, two of the most expensive foods in the world. These weren't everyday meals for most people, but for Castro they were common treats. He didn't just eat local food. He got special deliveries from Europe. Fine cheeses and meats came to his table regularly. When it came to drinks, Castro had expensive taste. He liked wines from France and Italy. These weren't cheap bottles. Each one cost hundreds of dollars. While many Cubans couldn't afford basic goods, Castro sipped on some of the world's best wines. Castro couldn't eat everything he wanted, though. His doctor told him not to eat beef or drink coffee. But these small limits didn't stop Castro from enjoying the best foods money could buy. Most of his food came from his own land. It was grown on his estate, Punto Cerro, or caught near his private island, Cayo Piedra. Sometimes Castro got special treats from other world leaders. The president of Algeria sent him red wine. Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq, gave him figs. These gifts show how Castro's eating habits were far from ordinary. Castro loved food so much that he often talked with his chefs. He'd go into the kitchen and discuss cooking with them. He was really interested in good food and how it was made. This wasn't just eating. For Castro, it was an art. All this fancy food shows a big difference between Castro's words and actions. He told everyone he lived simply. He said he was just like other Cubans. But his meals tell a different story. While many Cubans had trouble finding enough to eat, Castro enjoyed food that most people can only dream of. Wheels of Power, Castro's luxury car collection. Castro's automotive empire stood in stark contrast to the reality of most Cubans. While regular citizens couldn't own cars, he amassed a huge collection of expensive vehicles from around the world. This collection showcased the vast difference between his lifestyle and that of ordinary Cubans. His fleet included foreign German exotics, rare American cars from the 1950s, and special ZIL limousines from the Soviet Union. For years, a black ZIL gifted by Soviet leaders served as Castro's main car. When traveling, Castro was accompanied by several guards and helpers, state-of-the-art vehicles from all over the world, all while carrying his doctor, nurse, and photographer. For rough terrain, Castro kept Soviet-made GAZ jeeps, perfect for hunting trips in the Cuban countryside. Maintaining this fleet required a team of skilled mechanics using special parts from other countries, a luxury unavailable to most Cubans struggling to keep old cars running. Castro's car collection, worth millions of dollars, was shocking in a country where most people drove vehicles from the 1950s. It raised questions about his ideology of equality and simple living. His cars became symbols of his power and wealth, used to impress visiting world leaders and project importance on the global stage. The contrast between Castro's automotive luxury and the transportation struggles of everyday Cubans highlighted the inequalities within his system. His collection stood as a rolling contradiction to his professed ideals, a tangible reminder of the gap between the leader's life and the lives of those he led. All aboard Castro's luxury yacht and private jet. Castro loved fancy cars, but his taste for luxury didn't stop there. He had a secret way to escape Cuba's shores in style. While most Cubans couldn't leave the island, Castro sailed the seas on his own fancy boat. The star of Castro's private fleet was the Aquarama II. This wasn't just any boat. It was a 90-foot white yacht fit for a king. Inside, it was a floating palace. What made this boat really special was its power. Castro's friend, Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev, gave him a special gift. He sent 4 engines from missile boats to power the yacht. These weren't normal boat engines. They were super strong. They could push the Aquarama II to speeds over 42 knots. That's really fast for a big boat. The inside of the yacht was just as fancy as the outside. It had rare wood from Angola. This made the boat look even more expensive. Castro spared no expense in making his yacht the best it could be. But Castro didn't stop at just one boat. He had 2 smaller speedboats that went with the Aquarama II. They were called Pioneera I and Pioneera II. One of these boats had weapons on it. The other had medical gear. This shows how Castro thought about everything. He was ready for fun, but also for danger. Near the Bay of Pigs, a place known for a failed U.S. invasion. Here, Castro built a private marina called La Caleta del Rosario. This wasn't just a place to park his boats. It had another house and a place for guests to stay. Fidel Castro often hosted dignitaries aboard the Aquarama II, ferrying them to his secluded retreat at Cayo Piedra. Was Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the Nobel laureate and Castro's longtime friend, among the guests? No records confirm it, but picture this. The revolutionary leader and the literary giant sailing to a guarded island where politics and prose intertwined beneath Caribbean skies. All this luxury was a far cry from how most Cubans lived. They couldn't even leave the country without special permission. Meanwhile, their leader was zipping around on a super-fast yacht. It was a stark contrast that showed how different Castro's life was from his people's. But boats weren't Castro's only way to travel in style. He also had planes. His favorite was a private Ilyushin Il-62 jet. This wasn't a normal plane. It had a top-notch security system, encrypted communications, and anti-missile systems. Castro didn't stop at just one plane either. He had a whole fleet of smaller planes and helicopters. These were for flying around Cuba. No matter where he wanted to go, Castro had a fancy way to get there. Think about how this looked to regular Cubans. They were stuck using old cars and buses. Many couldn't even dream of leaving the island. At the same time, their leader was jetting around in a private plane. He could go anywhere he wanted, anytime he wanted. Castro's travel choices raise big questions. How could he justify such fancy trips? He always said he was just like other Cubans. He claimed to live simply. But his yachts and planes tell a different story. They show a man who lived in luxury while his people struggled. Power play, how Castro used wealth to maintain control. Castro's billions shaped the very fabric of Cuban society, turning his fortune into a political weapon that maintained his iron grip for nearly 5 decades. While ordinary citizens struggled, Castro orchestrated a complex system of rewards and punishments to stay in control. At the heart of Castro's strategy was a network of loyalty built on access to luxury. High-ranking officials were offered a taste of the good life: better housing, private transportation, and fancy goods most Cubans could only dream of. It was like an exclusive club where membership bought silence and unwavering support. Castro created a class of elites who owed their privileged status to him, ensuring their loyalty. Castro's wealth funded an extensive system to keep enemies in check. He poured money into a vast security apparatus that reached into every corner of Cuban life. The Committees for the Defense of the Revolution, CDR, acted as eyes and ears on every street, reporting any hint of dissent. Your own neighbors could be spying on you, all bankrolled by Castro's deep pockets. By controlling every aspect of the economy, Castro ensured that no one could build enough financial clout to challenge him. He nationalized industries and private businesses, eliminating potential economic opposition. This move wasn't just about socialist ideology. It was a calculated power play. Castro's ambitions extended beyond Cuba's shores. He used his wealth to finance revolutionary movements in other countries, creating a network of international allies who owed their success to him. Each revolution he supported added another layer of protection against outside pressure. Social programs became tools of political control. Castro invested in education and healthcare initiatives that improved living conditions, but also created a population dependent on the government for their most basic needs. How could you rebel against the system that educated your children and cared for your sick? Castro's personal fortune allowed him to weather economic sanctions that would have crippled most leaders. When international pressure mounted through trade restrictions, his hidden wealth provided a cushion. He maintained his grip on power even as the country's economy suffered, outlasting multiple U.S. presidents who tried to topple him. The execution of General Arnaldo Ochoa in 1989 sent a chilling message. Ochoa, a decorated war hero, was swiftly tried and executed for alleged corruption and drug trafficking. It showed that no one was safe if Castro felt threatened, regardless of their status or past loyalty. Castro wielded his wealth like a shield, deflecting criticism and maintaining his image as a man of the people. While he lived in luxury, he kept up the facade of a humble revolutionary leader. His control over the media ensured that only government-approved narratives reached the public, crucial in maintaining the myth of Castro as a selfless leader fighting for equality. The People's Burden: How Castro's Wealth Impacted Cuba. Regular Cubans were stuck in a real-life game of Survivor Communist Paradise Edition. Let's peek behind the Iron Curtain and see how Castro's billions impacted the folks who weren't invited to his fancy parties. Picture this: Castro's chowing down on lobster and caviar, while average Joes in Havana are lining up for hours just to get a measly loaf of bread. Food rationing was the norm for most Cubans, with strict limits on basics like rice, beans, and sugar. Meanwhile, Castro's personal chefs were whipping up gourmet meals fit for a royal feast. Talk about eating cake while the people starve. And let's talk money. While Castro's bank account was bursting at the seams, most Cubans were scraping by on pocket change. The average Cuban earned a whopping $20 a month. Yep, you read that right. 20 bucks? That's less than what Castro probably spent on his fancy cigars in a day. But hey, at least they were all equal in their poverty, right? Well, except for Castro and his buddies, of course. Now, Castro loved to brag about Cuba's amazing healthcare system. But here's the kicker. While he was building swanky private hospitals for himself and his elite pals, regular folks were stuck in crumbling clinics with no meds. Doctors were using outdated equipment and reusing supplies because there just wasn't enough to go around. But don't worry, if Castro got a hangnail, He had a whole team of top-notch docs at his beck and call. Housing was another fun game of haves and have-nots. Most Cubans were crammed into falling-apart apartments that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the revolution. Leaky roofs, crumbling walls, no hot water. It was like living in a time warp. But Castro? He had his pick of various luxury pads across Cuba. Tough choice, beach house or mountain retreat today? While Castro was busy playing real-life Monopoly with Cuba's resources, the economy was going down the toilet. He funneled loads of cash into his personal piggy bank, leaving state-run businesses starved for funds. Result? A stagnant economy where innovation went to die and productivity took a permanent vacation. But hey, at least Castro's bank account was healthy. All this wealth hoarding created a society split in two, Castro and his cronies living it up, while everyone else was left fighting for scraps. So much for that whole classless society thing Castro kept yakking about. Turns out some comrades were more equal than others. But here's the real mind-bender. How did Castro keep fooling people for so long? How did he square his man-of-the-people act with his billionaire lifestyle? Well, that's where the magic of propaganda comes in. Castro was a master at spinning tales and controlling what Cubans saw and heard. He'd show up on TV in his plain old army fatigues, talking about sacrifice and equality, while behind the scenes he was living like a rap star. Castro's secret billionaire lifestyle starkly contrasts with his socialist rhetoric, revealing power's corrupting influence. His estimated $900 million fortune remains untouched since his death, a testament to his enduring sway. While Cubans faced rationing and crumbling infrastructure, Castro lived lavishly, maintaining a facade through propaganda. His legacy is one of hypocrisy, preaching socialism while amassing capitalist-level wealth. This double life casts a long shadow over Cuba, leaving the nation grappling with economic hardship and disillusionment. How do we reconcile the public image of a revolutionary leader with the private reality of extravagant wealth? This stark contrast invites us to question the true nature of power and its consequences. See you on the other one.